This is Liberty Uncensored, and today we are going to be reading a white paper by L.B. Bork, who's also on this call, on this live, I should say. And we are going to read this out. I'm also going to share my screen for folks who are here watching, but I'm going to read it out for the listeners later, and then we are going to discuss it. But to give you a little bit of insight off the bat, if this is your first time seeing this content, is that what we are doing is we are educating people about the nature of their political status and how to correct political status to regain their freedom under the de jure nationality of their birth, that is the United States of America, a state, a sovereign state that you are born into as a national, and how to correct for the problem, which is that in 1868, the 14th Amendment was passed, which converted everybody by contract into slaves to a 14th Amendment government that acts as a de facto government and overlay to the birthright of the nationals of the states. As such, we have a dual system of law. We have a de facto and a de jure law, but the de jure is not acting, it is not expressed, it is not active, and thus we need to take steps to activate it again, to bring back our rightful government and our rightful political status as individuals and as the collective. And L.B. Bork has been doing this for how long, L.B.? Like almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years I've been in the movement, but things were wrong even when I got into it back in 93. And so I started doing my own research, and that's when I wrote my book and started People's Awareness Coalition. And
right. So People's Awareness Coalition has been around for
25
years.
26 maybe going on.
And your book has been around for 27, right?
No, only actually PAC was formed first.
Okay.
The Red Memo was written in 1999 and was really released in 2000.
Okay. So 26 years. Yeah. So the People's Awareness Coalition, or PAC, is the enterprise that LB has been running for almost 30 years, that has been educating people on how to correct their political status and regain their birthright. There is a multitude of, as LB puts it, opportunists and operatives out there. And I like to add a third class as the ignorance. But the amount of people that are out there that are similar to, what's that guy's name? Brandon Joe Williams, Anna von Reitz, and a slew of others. And for those folks who know who I'm talking about, there's also Gandalf. And
Island Makers.
Yeah. And so LB has come out a while back with a program within PAC called Island Makers that calls out all of these opportunists and operatives and showcases their fraud. And that is definitely a major problem that is out there, and it turns a lot of people off of investigating the law and understanding the law. And so what we're going to do is today we are going to talk about nationality, and we're going to read this white paper on nationality, and then we're going to have a discussion around it. And for anybody who wants to learn more, I'll tell you now and I'll tell you after where you can go. If you go to any articles that are the recent articles of Liberty Uncensored, if you click on any of them, if you go at the top, there's a link that says Law Channel. If you click Law Channel, it'll take you to a Telegram group where you can get involved in a conversation that goes much deeper. And that's where the hub of the conversation is happening right now, at least on Telegram. But you can also go to the Facebook group, and we now have a Discord up, which really is for folks that are a little bit further on in the conversation to go to the deepest levels. But if you're interested, you go to the articles on Liberty Uncensored, you click the link at the top that says Law Channel, and it'll take you to the right place to continue to discuss this. We also welcome challengers, folks who think that they have something to present that's different to what we're talking about here. Now, that's not open to anybody with any scheme out there, but it is open to folks who have a challenge for specific information in your. For every 10 people out there, there's nine of the that for every 10 people out there that think they have something to offer regarding status correction or nationality or whatever they want to call it, straw man, all these different things. 9 out of 10 are utter garbage. And the one that's left over oftentimes is just missing a little bit of information that puts them over into the next level. But if you think that you have something real to offer that is different, or that we're doing something wrong or whatever, come and challenge it, and we'll debate you live right here, Substack or on Telegram or wherever. We will debate you live, and stick your neck out, and we'll see what happens. Open challenge. All right. Oh, also, open challenge for Anna von Reitz and all the others out there too, that think that they have something going on. Open challenge for a debate to all these people. And by the way, LB's been open to having a debate for a long time now with these people, and they have refused to come on. So hey,
yeah,
open challenge.
The latest was Roger Sales. He refused to debate me on his show.
There you go. It's always the same. It's always the same. People back out, or they have some sort of whatever kind of excuse. There's 1,000 different excuses, but what's that? Well, it doesn't matter. Let's move on. So this white paper is called Nationality Examined. This is written by LB, and we are going to go over it. Let me pull it up here. If it wants to open. There we go. Okay. There we go. Let's get rid of that. All right. Nationality Examined. The wise know their weakness too well to assume infallibility, and he who knows most knows best how little he knows. Thomas Jefferson. Unknown to most people in America, the Constitution is an international agreement or charter between the several American sovereignties known as states. To explain this presentation in simple terms, so that you fully understand what is going to be established herein below. Pretend that the United States does not exist. To continue, most believe that America is a country and nation. However, it is not. America is only considered a landmass. Most people fail to understand that there are several nations that live on the land known as America within North America, which would include the American indigenous tribes. The law. In American law, as established under the general principles of international law, every state in the Union is also a nation and country under such principles. Fundamentally, as described by the principles of John Bouvier, a nation is a civil society band together by its mutual consent. The people of each state, accurately countries, in a collective in a collective mode, provide the government of each state its sovereignty. People that are in each state are legally termed nationals. They carry the nationality of the state or country of which they are members of. The term citizen differs from the term national. The term citizen refers to the political rights of a national of any particular country. Therefore, it should be understood that the terms are not interchangeable. Men and women derive their rights from the Creator, which are then shaped by the society of which they live. Prior to the execution or the installment of the 14th Amendment, a constitutional amendment inserted after the Civil War that was not lawfully instituted, such rights were determined under a system of societal law called the common law. Let us now establish what nationality is by authority or given practice. For starters, look at the definition of nationality as defined by the American Heritage Dictionary. Nationality or nationalities: the status of belonging to a particular nation by origin, birth, or naturalization. A people having common origins or traditions and often constituting a nation. Existence as a politically autonomous entity. Note that nationality encompasses a political autonomous entity. This is saying that a sovereign state has the capacity to govern itself without any outside interference, not even by the United States under the original form of the Constitution. The states created the United States. Now, to further evidence the point being made, directly below is a definition from Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, that describes the lawful premise of what is termed the Union. By the definition, the definition actually shows how a state government is portrayed as a matter of law. National government. A national government is a government of a single state or nation, united as a community by what is termed the social compact, and possessing complete, perfect supremacy over persons and things, so far as they can be made the lawful objects of civil government. A federal government is distinguished from a national government by its being the government of a community of independent and sovereign states, united by compact. Again, in legal sense, the United States Constitution is basically a charter, compact, or treaty that has been constructed by the several American nations to handle certain matters for them on an international or external level. However, understand some provisions of the Constitution handle matters that concern the Union internally. In regard to the nationals of the several states in the American Union, there are very few factors that make the federal government a national government. In a large sense, such factors apply only to the several states. The nationals of each state are not direct parties to the federal contract, hence have no direct dealings with it. As noted herein, we note that to have a national sovereignty, a country must not have outside interference from another sovereign. Because each state in the Union gives the United States its right of existence, each state is sovereign, not actually the United States. The United States can only maintain its sovereignty via people or the nationals of each state collectively. And also remember, a rightful civil so-called society can truly only exist by its consent. The 14th Amendment was forced on the several states via a series of unlawful acts under the Constitution and international law. In view of that, now please observe the definition which sets forth what has transpired in the eyes of the insurgents. Insurgents are people who do not follow the established law of a country. To best explain the problem, we now evidence the definition of de facto government that is taken from the law dictionary that judges use, Ballantyne's Law Dictionary. De facto government: a new government which exercises undisputed sway over the entire country, the former established government having been nullified by successful rebellion or having lost the support of the people. A de facto government arises where the established government has been subverted by rebellion, so that the new government exercises undisputed sway for the time being over the entire country, or where the people of any portion of a country subject to the same government throw off their allegiance to that government and establish one of their own, and show not only that they have established a government, but also their ability to maintain it. Note that the definition portrays that the people of the states may have relinquished their support for their de jure governments. However, people of the southern states had their governments taken from them by force, and people of the remaining states of the Union were set up under the legal operations of the 14th Amendment under fraudulent means. Now, in contraposition to the above principles of nationality, people who claim to be citizens and nationals of the United States see such persons defined in Title 8 USC Section 1101A22 are essentially requesting that all their rights be provided to them by the insurgent de facto state and federal governments over the creator and their societies, i.e., they are under civil or private law. Accordingly, this makes such citizens, U.S. citizens, subordinates or vassals in a feudal system. See the below definition that has been taken from the American Heritage Dictionary. A vassal is a person who held land from a feudal lord and received protection in return for homage and allegiance. A bondman, a slave, and a subordinate or dependent. The difference between the original system and the current one is that there was absence of homage and allegiance by the nationals of the several states. The men of each country in the Union were the real protection of the state. The allegiance due in the original system was to the nation, thus to its state or government. The political system that is established under the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution is beseeching homage from its citizens. This amendment is what changed rightful nationalities and citizenship from being state-based under the rule of international law to that of federal or of the United States under an operation of law set forth by Section 2 of that amendment. The residual sovereignty of each state in the Union that were not given or transferred to the United States of America in the original Constitution is usurped and transferred to the new United States and controlled under color of law. Therefore, one must understand that the people who are participating in elections in rebellion under the 14th Amendment are no longer nationals that make up the sovereignty of a state. Such persons are actually subjects or vassals of the United States entity who are then residents in its political subdivisions. Such persons are thusly dictated to by the United States and the state officers of which they live or reside in, as the amendment references. Due to the 14th Amendment operations, the people and accordingly the states are no longer sovereign. The United States assumes full sovereignty, it acting as a king under the guise of democracy with the approval of its own citizens or denizens created under the amendment. In summary and review, the question is, are you an American national, aka a United States national? Have you knowingly given up your rights? Below are a few general factors to consider that will determine whether or not you are considered or deemed to be a national of the United States or an American national by the governments. 1. Have you signed any government form or participated in any activity that states you must be a citizen of the United States or a U.S. citizen? An example, voting in any or all state or federal elections, or sign any Social Security or other benefit or taxation form, e.g., a passport. 2, because only U.S. citizens can vote and under international doctrines of law, a child carries the nationality of his father. Did your father participate in any election in the United States in his lifetime? 3, do you only fly the flag of the United States and ignore your state flag? 4, do you refer to America as your country? These are just some generic or general factors that provide the presumption or may establish prima facie evidence that as a matter of fact and or law that you are indeed a United States national and accordingly a United States citizen, i.e. a citizen and national of the United States. If you truly want to be part of the true sovereignty of the country in which you live, you must terminate the ties between the federal government and you, both contractual and political. Understand that if you terminate your political ties with the current system, you technically will not be a citizen of a state or the United States or America. Your political rights de jure, which means rightful or by right in law, have been stripped from you by the insurgent political system established by the 14th Amendment Reconstruction government. Accordingly, understand the rightful owners of the states are the people who are not claiming the citizen of the United States status and have secured the national of a state status. As you can see, there are a lot of things to consider in this new America, and due to the fact that state governments have been usurped unlawfully, they have left a way out. Um, I guess I could read this part too. State National Society, the essence of PAC. There are many people in America that fail to understand the simple principles of how the system of government works under the 14th Amendment in the United States Constitution. PAC is teaching people the correction to this. Throughout history, many people have removed themselves from governmental systems. By doing so, such systems lead to their eventual demise. It is very important to understand that if one is participating politically or partaking of benefits of this governmental system, engages maxims of law that establish such individuals are responsible for the actions and crimes of the people and government. The State National Society is comprised of the lawful people who understand these important issues of which concern America. These societies are rightful bodies politic of the American Union. Putting it in simple terms, the nationals of the states are the lawful owners of their countries. The primary goal of the State National Society is to lead by example. We invite you to be part of our society. Please join in assisting us to assure that the benefits, heritages, and freedom of the peoples of America are preserved. So that's that white paper. Now, the content there, it can seem kind of heavy, understandably. This is this is one of the lighter ones too, but understandably, it can seem kind of heavy when you're coming from zero, right? When you don't have any idea what we're talking about, and I would say that it can even seem heavier when you're coming from a false position, a position of false confidence in what you've learned from other people out there. But the the difficulty really lies in whether or not you're open to receiving this information in the first place. There's so much indoctrination involved in the society that basically has made it so that people just reject offhand. They just reject the notion that there is a lawful remedy for the problems that we are facing because they see so many scams out there.
Mm.
And
It's
because there's
sickening.
so many scams, yeah, because there's so many scams, we don't have a population that has confidence in these things. What we have to do is we have to get people understanding that there is options and that we are exercising them. And first step is what we're doing now, which is educating folks on the fundamentals. And as we go forward, we're going to be asking folks to provide questions that we can then answer. And if you're able to join in the chats in the other locations, like on Telegram, that would be best, because then we can get you funneled down to exactly where you need to be to learn more. Like I said, you can find on any Liberty Uncensored article recently posted, you can find the law channel and the links at the top of the article, which will get you to the Telegram where we can discuss more and we can have live calls where you can ask and get answers right away. But also, if you have questions while we're on this call, you can put it into the chats and we will answer your questions directly as well here. And in the future, we hope to have folks that come on the videos and debate and chat with us live, where we can answer questions or get into matters more deeply, which is what we're doing in other locations. But we're bringing this to Substack now. So with all that, the white paper that we just read, fundamentally what it is saying is that you have a birthright as a white person in good standing within the territory of the United States of America, which is the de jure birthright that cannot be taken away from you, because the de jure system that is pre 1868 was never dissolved. It was basically ignored from 1868
Yes,
onward.
ignored.
Yeah.
About based on policy. policy of communism,
And so
simply.
so fundamentally, before we go any deeper on any of this, fundamentally what happened was a coup took control of the nations, right? So a coup took control of the sovereign nations. Part of that was involving the Civil War, to set the matters in line to be able to do this. But fundamentally, it comes down to the fact that the 14th Amendment never was ratified. It never passed properly through Congress. There wasn't a quorum met, and the 14th Amendment did not get ratified. It is not an amendment. That is not part of the Constitution proper. It was contracted into existence, and all the people who tacitly agree to that contract with their actions or with their silence have agreed to that contract, which means that no matter what your moral position or whatever your philosophy of the law is, whether you're a voluntarist or you're a extreme authoritarian, politically minded person, it does not matter. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, it does not matter. All that matters is the fact that since 1868, your ancestors and you have all been slaves into a debt slavery system, a foreign government that has taken control through a coup d'etat. For 158 years, we've been slaves. And the only way out, and this is all explicit in the law, the only way out is the act that was created the day before they passed the 14th Amendment, right? It's the expatriation.
I say implemented it or put it on the
Right.
books.
Right. The day that it came into effect, because
Yeah,
it wasn't passed.
it
So
wasn't lawfully ratified
it's a
according
thing
to
that
Article 5.
exists. It's a thing that exists, but it's not actually in the law. So the day before they passed, the day before they brought it into effect, they passed the Expatriation Act, which is the doorway. It is the pressure release valve. It is the golden ticket out of their system. It is the validation and the affirmation of the fact that you have a right to choose your nationality under the law of nations, Vattel, and in recognition of Zohm's law of persons, you are a person in so much as you're under a civil state, but the de facto is not the law state, it is the state of force. We are under a enforced government that has, in fact, taken control of the territory that is the United States of America. But our de jure law and the state that exists within that, it never was dissolved. It still exists, and you have a birthright to it. And the next step is teaching people exactly how they can exit the de facto and properly re uh,
Established. Yeah.
reestablish their birthright and their proper political status, which is recognized internationally and by all laws, going back as far as humanity has had laws. Whether the language has been there or not, this has been recognized. So with all that said, LB, is there anything you want to add to what I just said before we go into any particular things deeper?
Well, there's a lot to go over, but the main thing that people don't teach is they don't teach the dual system of law. And I've been mocked about it because of the operatives that are out there. That Van Wrights is one of them. She mocks me on it, but that's what they've done. Instead of putting a new constitution in place during this or after the Civil War, they created this system under the 14th Amendment, which allows them to play two sides of the fence. So that's a deception in itself. And unless you know the rules and the law and whatnot, you're going to get taken by the courts. And that's what happens in this movement quite a bit is they go to court and they start arguing things that, I came up with a thing called the duck rule. And it's, if you quacks like a duck, swims like a duck, and looks like a duck, it's a duck. and people going into court and saying they're an American national or whatever. You know, I've seen cases where, you know, the government's ready, and you know, for example, the prosecutor said, "Well, judge, he's claiming to be a sovereign citizen or whatever," which I have a different, you know, definite definition for sovereign citizen. It encompasses what we're talking about here, but they've used that to demonize people. They say the prosecutor will say, "Well, judge, I have his voter registration here," and that just seals the the fate of this person claiming whatever they claim. And that's why a lot of these people are losing in court, because they don't have the right status, they don't have standing to claim what they're doing, so they're going to walk all over them. And there's another thing that this movement does, the lost movement. They say, "Well, I did this on the passport," and they stood silent. Well, the common law maxim on silence is sometimes agreement, not always. So if they're holding the golden ticket on the law, it doesn't matter if they answered or not, because you're still the duck. So when it comes to being prosecuted, they'll prosecute you. So yeah, that's the biggest thing that this movement's or, you know, anyone in constitutional law is missing, is the dual system of law. I termed it the two hat principle, you know, based on the 14th Amendment system, because they're wearing two hats. They have to act as jure and de facto, and that comes under their uh, involvement under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. I'm the only one, I think, to publish or you know, write about how the 14th Amendment works also. Yeah, they're the secret societies and all the Masons, judges on the upper echelon. They don't know all this, but of course they don't let the people know about it. That's why they call them secret societies. Anyway, little
So
presentation.
the yeah the the nature of expatriation and status correction is not new. The fact that there is a right to choose one's nation or nationality is not new. The uh, amount of arguments that I've seen that are very superficial, to the point, like so many things, but you know, most of the arguments that I get are about race. So it's like moral questions. It's like race, the rights of women. Because
Right.
the notion that people have in their head is that like the dominant patriarchy, white male shit that has been espoused. But in reality, uh, the the right to nationality existed for women as much as it existed for men. It's the same. The rights of women uh, were even greater pre 1968 than the notion of the rights that they have today. With everything that's available to women today, right? So the rights, actually, you actually had rights, one, and then you had equal rights to men. You didn't have the same civil duties and obligations and responsibilities, but you had the same rights. And uh, and then
Well,
as far as like race and national origin, the fact is that it's very simple. If you and I've heard this argument now several times, and it's correct, which is that if you travel to Japan, that doesn't make you Japanese.
mhm.
If you travel to the United States of America, it doesn't make you American, or in other words, it doesn't make you like uh, a Californian or a New Yorker or whatever. It just makes you somebody who's traveling to another country, a guest of that nation. Even if you live there, you're a guest of that nation. So literally everywhere that you go in the world, you still have a birthright to only one place, and you can't be a dual citizen. This is a fraud. This is a fallacy in law. You can't be a dual citizen. You have to have allegiance to one or the other. So,
Yeah, that
um,
dual citizenship is something that Luciferians came up with.
right. And why did they come up with it? Because
Erasing the borders under world communism.
right, because this is the every single action that has been taken in regards to internationalism or globalism or whatever you want to call it, which is Zionism, it is communism. It's global, international, world communism, which is the idea that a small group, an oligarchy, is going to maintain its status as an elite class that runs everything for everybody else, but everybody else is egalitarian on the lowest level of what egalitarian might mean. Your class is depressed to the state of a slave, and there are no borders. There is no freedom except what is granted, and yeah. So basically, you have the freedom to be a slave as the communist. That should be the communist like slogan.
Mhm.
You're free to be a slave. And so that's why for the last 150 years since 1868 we've been a communist state. And if you look at everything that's happened in that time, you can see that in effect this, they haven't called it that. This is where everybody gets hung up. But you'd think that they would, say something about it, or we would know, or um, somehow a court is going to tell everybody about it at some point. Some judge is going to say something. Okay, nobody who is operating in the political system or in the judicial system or any of the de facto government is going to come out and say that they're committing fraud and treason.
Right.
They're not going to come out and say that because they don't want to get hung. Because what is the correct punishment for somebody who commits treason? It's death. And so they're not going to come out and say that. They're not going to give up the game. These are people that go through layers and levels of secret societies, Masons to the skull and bones to whatever they're doing. They go up through the ranks to get to these positions as judges and as members of the higher up political class. These are not organic movements, and the one of the best examples of that is that Bill Clinton was a nobody from wherever the fuck, Arkansas, I think it was. And he
Yes.
went to a Bilderberg conference in 1989 or 90, and he became president in 92. He was chosen. He was a nobody. Nobody cared about Bill Clinton. And then all of a sudden he was put on as the next big thing simply because the Bilderbergs had chosen him. And there's a whole line of evidence that supports that as well. But without going into every tangent that comes into my brain, basically what we're saying is that uh, the communist state doesn't allow you freedom. And we've been a communist state. When you vote, your vote doesn't count. It's the popular vote. Bush lost his first election. Bush Jr. lost his first election in the popular vote. Trump lost his first election in the popular vote. Hillary Clinton actually got the popular vote 2016. Your vote doesn't matter in any way. And yet,
It matters you consent.
right. And yet, despite it not mattering as far as what you think it's going to do, it matters to them because it's you signing a contract that says, yes, please rule me. Please
Mhm.
be my master. So it's not just voting, it's everything. It's getting a driver's license or a hunting, fishing license or social security benefits or what else is out there, LB? What else can people
Well,
do
just
that
everything. They've converted the law of nations status of being a citizen into residence. And if you look at all the laws of the states, it's for residents, which are communist. They're foreigners in their own countries if you're white. And again, people like Mark Dice have even brought this up lately on his presentations about the act of, I think he talks about the one that was put in place right after the Constitution was put in place under the uniform rule of naturalization, which encompasses all the states of people coming into the United States. You had to be white at that time, but that was repealed. And then they put a new one in place in, I think it's 1802, if I remember correctly. But that one's never been repealed. They did is start bringing people in under Reconstruction or during the Lincoln period And like I said, it's policy now that these people are here. There's no congressional law that approves of them being here. So it's null and void, basically. So until people start taking their states back or their statuses of the states, this is going to keep going on. And I released this information to the public, like we said, 2000, and they did nothing with it. And they've just gotten worse with their programs over the last 25 years. And it's going to get worse unless people put their foot down. Of course, there's a way to address this, and I known about it for 25 years. And that's got to be executed now. And it's congressionally approved. They like to say they're in treason if they don't follow the Constitution under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. So they put the remedies in there, but no one knows about them. Their game is there's a rule of law, a common law that says, let those who wish to be deceived be deceived. So that's their game. They just deceive people. And they're going to keep doing it. I mean, they just said AI could take hold for the next 10 years, and they're not gonna stop it, which I think AI is basically fraud. It's another form of fraud, deception, trying to take advantage of things, or it can be used for good, but it's mostly going to be used for bad. I guarantee it. So people got to say no more.
Okay, so for folks who are in the chat right now, if you have questions about what we're talking about, please ask and give us some direction of which things are of most interest to discuss and to respond to. But we've laid out fundamentally the problem, and the solution to that problem is built into the problem. So because they have to build the remedy in. So the problem is the fact that we don't have political status. So if we go to court for everything from a driver's license problem or whatever, a ticket, or if we go to court over uh, anything that's not a crime, meaning that you don't have a corpus delicti or an injured party, you end up in court and you bring up the fact that you have rights. You say, I have rights, though. It won't matter because you don't have rights. So this is something that affects everybody very significantly in small things and large. The solution on the individual level is to expatriate yourself, which is to say to correct your political status by exiting the jurisdiction in the Expatriation Act's release valve that allows that in law, that affirms that in law, I should say, that you exit the jurisdiction of the federal government and you enter back into your birthright, your state. But on the individual level, while that is something that you can do, it leaves you as an island amidst a oftentimes not so calm sea. So the idea is to actually collectively work together to get recognition of correct political status in the de facto government, to basically hold their feet to the coals until they recognize the political status exists, that people can be de jure nationals of the states, which does a couple of things at once. It exposes those fraudsters and treasonous people, and it also allows for us to basically prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is a dual system of law on paper in their system, and to then utilize that proof to make drastic changes in the nature of the system that we are living within. So there is both the individual aspect to this, to correct status of the individual and thus leave the jurisdiction of the 14th Amendment contract. and to re-enter into one's proper republic. And secondly, to collectively cooperate toward uh, reestablishing the proper state. And both of these things can be done, and we know how to do them, LB particularly. And so this is the direction that we see as the only, or I don't want to talk for you, LB, but I see this as the only remedy at law that exists that is available to us before we have to appeal to heaven. And for those who've been paying attention to Liberty Uncensored, this last week was on the militia. And I just did a call earlier about the militia, what that means, its history and everything. And that is what I was mostly speaking to was this, what happens when all legal remedy fails. When the last legal remedy fails to accomplish whatever you're appealing for, right? Whatever you're trying to accomplish. And the lock-in result of this is the appeal to heaven. It is the moment where all human courts have ignored your claim. And the only thing left to you is the court of God, which is that which it's the moment when you pick up your gun and you do anything and everything necessary to accomplish your goal. This is what the colonists did when they seceded from Britain. Now, if we don't want to go that direction, if we don't want to have to fight a bloody battle or a bloody war in the streets with this entity, then we have to expose the entity for what it is, and we have to do this in the proper ways and law. There is a lot of rhetoric in the world about ways in which we're going to man up and take action. Most of this is just people flapping their lips, but the idea behind it is understood. It's the notion that something needs to happen, but how many people have the solution? How many people have the answer to what needs to happen? Nobody. Even these major groups that are forming, they don't really have an answer. If you ask them what happens when you win, they won't have an answer. What happens when you gain authority? They don't know how to run a government. They don't know what it means. They don't know how it works. It's an empty-minded result because they don't actually believe that they could. That's really the problem.
So,
people have already surrendered. They're
yeah.
waiting for the dystopia.
Now that you bring that up, there's a lot of people out there that are saying we have to restore the republic. And that's kind of a misnomer because the republic's still there because they're wearing two hats. There's a Republican form of guarantee, government guaranteed state. It's the people that have the problem. So the restoration belongs in each of us. So that's where the restoration is. These people that saying, well, this isn't a democracy, it's a republic. Well, explain it. They can't explain it. None of them can. They've just been taught to say these things, you know. And that's what the adversary does. They just give you a line to follow, like the labels, for example. Liberals, conservatives, Democrats, Republicans. They're all made up. Things that the adversary has done to get people to follow. So that's not going to end until you start acting the part of understanding what they've done and following the rules of law. That's one thing I understood when I started this. Speaking of, a mission statement, my mission statement I came up with 7 years ago already was that we're based in peace. And that's what Corey was explaining a few minutes ago. We're based in peace, and the ultimate thing is going against tyrants, and they're not tyrants. if you're acting in ignorance. Like I've said in many times that if someone's willing to ignore what we're talking about here, they have no room to complain, you know? So that's problem. Problem is within each of us, or the remedy is too. So anyway.
Right. And this is a um, this is a commonality. What is a maxim at law that um, for what you're willing, this isn't the actual maxim. This is a uh, paraphrased, right? Longer version, you could say. What you are willing to accept is what you're fit to bear. So you accept the terms of the contract, whether tacitly or overtly or however you do it. You accept those terms. You're fit to bear the responsibility and the outcome of that. Just as one who is fit to bear freedom bucks the conqueror at every opportunity, one that is fit to bear slavery is one that passively bows their head, goes to the knee, and bends their back for that entity that is enslaving them. I think that's actually in the movie Gladiator. He says something to that effect too.
Mm,
I don't know why that just came up, but
that was a great
um,
movie. It explains what was happening here. You know, Caesar was going to turn uh, the republic back to the people and come out of the dictatorship. And that's exactly what's happened here in America, you
hmm,
know. So anyway, sorry to interrupt, but that movie spoke to me in that respect
yeah,
because, and then, he was going to give the Senate back because the Senate didn't have control of things really. It was under dictatorship. And that's where these executive orders come from. If you people don't know that, it's a quasi dictatorship under the 14th Amendment. And it's based on the emergency they declared, which is just nonsense. But that's the way they look at it. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
no, you're fine. So basically, what we're talking about with this component, right, is that if you don't take action to resolve your enslavement in your political status, right? If you don't take action to stake your claim basically to your own political status, your own how you are going to be seen in the by all the nations of the world, in the law of nations, your political status. Who do you belong to? What nation belongs to you? If you're not willing to take action to correct this, if it's wrong, right? First, you have to say, well, is it wrong? Am I of this political status or that? What is my political status? Well, what we're informing you of right now, and you can do whatever research you want, but I highly suggest you look through our material because it's I mean LB's material really it summarizes everything that you're going to need to know, but it puts it right out there for all the every citation you need, every summary that you could get, every breakdown, it's all right there for you. And if you want to extrapolate on that or go out and do further research, then please do. But read the material here.
I'm here to debate or answer questions. I've been here for a long time, but until I met Corey, actually, there's a couple people I've met in the last few years. I mean, these people, they started with Aaron Russo back in '95 when he came out with that movie Mad as Hell. Uh, he wrote or came up with the movie also Freedom to Fascism, which he was an operative. He knew the Rockefellers and whatnot. So they were planning as far as when Clinton was put in place, how they were going to control the movement. And I came along and threw a monkey wrench into the whole thing in 2000 about. So everything that's happened the last 25 years should have been stopped 20 years ago, but people ignored what I had to say. And it's going to get worse until people start doing something about it because they're just playing the game here. You brought up, I forgot what you brought up, but it was about the nature of societies, and there's a guy named his name's shoot, what's his name? I forgot his name, but he's over in Japan looking at their society right now and how structured they are. They're probably one of the few people that have kept their true nation together. You know, they've rejected all this the transient immigrants and things by the I want to call them the Luciferians who are destroying us. But it's pretty interesting. There's another thing that I saw today, something on Gavin Newsom. He's got a video out and he's signing. He's doing the Illuminati sign with his hands, makes a pyramid, upside down pyramid with his hands through the whole video. So he's one of them. And Trump does it too. I've seen judges do it. It's a secret signing that they're controlling everyone, you know, and people just ignore it and get involved in their Luciferian politics. It's really we got to put into this.
Right, and it goes very deep into all of the, it's all the occult stuff and Masons and Illuminati and all that. Yeah, it goes into the history of it is so deep, and there's a billion people covering all of those points. I think that um, fundamentally what everybody's missing is this component of not the problem, maybe a
Oh,
little
it's a
bit of like
law.
what
The
the
law,
problem is, but really what people are missing is the fact that there's a solution.
right?
We're not lost. The solution's been there the whole time. It's just that nobody's acting upon it. And now, what we're talking about is let's start acting upon it. Let's actually take it to its fruition, because if we do exercise this, what we're talking about here, and let's say we fail, the only way that we could fail is if the people running the government explicitly present their lawlessness to the world. In a way, I would say they're already doing it. Everybody knows that they're corrupt, but now we would have it on paper in law that they are corrupt, and they are accepting they're basically by ignoring us, they're accepting their fraud and their treason on paper, which then gives us the flexibility then to make the appeal to heaven.
They're evil, is what they
Right.
are.
So we then could make the appeal to heaven and grab our guns and go and organize our militia, because the final appeal has been ignored. The last thing, the only thing in law, the only remedy that exists. And by the way, this is the only a remedy that exists in the United States of America, because sovereignty wasn't given to the body of the people in all the other countries. So what's happening in Europe right now is going to have a different set of it's going to have a different arrangement for how they're going to resolve
Yes,
the issues happening there.
yeah.
But here,
World communism has been overlaid in all the countries of the world. Like it or not, even Iran is part of the world communist system, and it's been done different in every country.
well, yeah,
And
everybody's all about Iran right now. Everybody's like
right,
supporting Iran. Iran was taken over by Islam.
yes.
What was it, 1,000 years ago? And
Well, once, but that's all Luciferian also.
yeah, the whole thing. Those are Persian people, but they've had so much overlay. I mean, it's before 1,000 years ago when the Jews came into Babylon. Um, they 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 basically robbed Babylon of its culture.
Yeah,
Right? Did what they did to Egypt, did
they
what they did
stole it.
to the Italian peninsula, like everywhere. It's the
Like
same story. But
the
these are
Jews.
Persian. The Iranians are Persian people. They're not. Uh, why are they Islamic? It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, okay. So
CIA.
they were conquered, right? So. Uh, no, there's nothing wrong with the Persian people. There's definitely something wrong with Islam, and there's something definitely wrong with the fact that they're all participating in the same hypocrisy, whether they're Islamic nation, Christian nation, whatever they are, Buddhist nation, it doesn't matter. They're all part of the same hypocrisy, doing the same thing. Hindu nation, I mean, look at India. India is disgustingly involved in everything that's going on with
Mhm.
from WF to the globalist fucking empire in every way. All these nations are involved, all of them. So uh, the United States of America has a relief valve that nobody else does.
Right, exactly.
I don't. LB, is there any other country? Is there any other place? Is there any other federated land? Is there what? Is there anywhere that has
I
adopted
haven't
the American
studied.
system?
I don't think so, not exactly.
I don't think
You
so
know,
either.
the 48ers came over here in 1848, and they started infiltrating. And part of the 48ers were the people that tried to take over Europe with Marxism. And they actually got prosecuted for it, sedition. And then
Right.
they came over here and slowly implemented it and under the 14th Amendment. And basically, the United States is the first one to apply communism. Russia has got nothing on us. We were started under the 100, 60, 80 years prior to them. And
That's why
that's
the
why my
commies.
book's called the Red Amendment,
Mhm.
because that amendment is based on communism
That's why the
and Marx.
commies started here. They had why Trotsky lived in New York and got funded and then was sent
Mm,
back because
yeah.
communism was it's the
They
14th Amendment, the new Americanism, right? It's that there's a reason why all the communist states were funded by the United States, by the moguls, right? And then,
yeah,
but there's different levels, right? They play the different levels, like Albert Pike says, when the people need a hero, we'll supply one. They always play the leading roles in every group, even the groups that debate each other and hate each other and fight each other. They play both sides against each other. And then they hedge their bets on everything. And all the communist states had support from the United States directly. And just like they fund the jihadists and then they fund the state of Israel, who also supplies the people and the training for the jihadists and forms up
yeah.
this. So they're all one fucking thing. They're all the same organization. They're all the same Kabbalists.
I
The
call them the
cabal of
Luciferian bunch.
yeah, the cabal
I
of
name them the Luciferian
Luciferian,
bunch.
evil, baby eating, parasitical, psychopaths.
Yeah.
So, uh,
I just found the guy's name. Nick Johnson is this guy's name. He's got a YouTube channel and he's pretty neat. I like the guy. He's kind of down to earth and he does a lot of investigation around the United States, but now he's over in Japan looking at their culture. So
mm,
his latest one of his latest things is Japan's mountain towns are quickly disappearing. So basically, that's communism. Even though Japan's got its culture left, it's losing their local farmers and
mhm,
their structure that America lost, 100 plus years ago
yeah.
through these moguls that Corey talked about. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
In in, uh, in my last book, Unveiling a Better World: Deconstructing the Veracity of the American Fable, I talk about the loss of the land, um, it started really in the early 1800s, even before all the 14th Amendment stuff. But, it was the Industrial Revolution, quote unquote, right? It was the migration of peoples from farming labor uh into the cities, industrial labor, and it was highly, highly motivated by the moguls that the names, all the same names that the Rockefellers and the Morgans and all this stuff, the
Yep.
same types and names, the Collins, were behind all of that, and they were dragging people into the cities and encouraging and marketing and propagandizing the cities as the place to be. The the battles over wages and the production of farms and the prices they could get from selling the product on the farms, all of it was manipulated to the
Hmm.
extent that they were bringing people in droves from the farms, which we were an agrarian economy, and it was something like it was vast. It was like 98% or something like that in the
Hmm.
1700s, and then by 1850 it drops by like a third, and then we get to the 1950s, and we're at like 20% or something like that agrarian
Yeah.
economy. But Karl Butz comes along in the 50s and totally just destroys our agrarian economy. Like utterly, it just decimates it. And then after Karl Butz in the 50s, it became it was just the landslide to nothing. And now we have 0.02% of the population
Right.
has owns small farms, and the rest is agriculture.
Yep.
And then we transact. Karl Butz was involved in this too, making some of the first very large uh, material transactions of monocrops between various nations, so creating treaties and stuff that made it possible for, we're going to sell you our vast corn supply, you sell us your rice supply, whatever. And instead of being a dynamic farming source in your own nation and being autonomous and being self-sustaining and regenerative to your own people, instead you trade one monocrop product for another from over there. By the way, what does that sound like? Communism. And who controls it? The
The
oligarchs at the very
capitalist.
center.
The
Yes,
capitalist.
and this is something that we have to say too, right? Capitalist is the same as communist. Okay, they're what is a capitalist is not Adam Smith's Capital. Adam Smith was not writing about the capitalist. The
Mhm.
capitalist is the monopolist and the parasitical class. They add the ist on the end, and all of a sudden they're able to monopolize markets and create anonymizing of money and transport that money across borders, across nations, to hide that money in numbered accounts in various places that they create havens out of. This is the uh, actions of the communist, international communist. This is not the actions of the free market capital that Adam Smith wrote about.
Mhm.
I don't want to go too long on all that, but it's just to say that the language has been manipulated all over the place. So all
Yes.
these leftists that are like, "Oh, we hate the capitalists," and all the rightists that are like, "Oh, we hate the communists." You're talking about the same people.
Yeah, it gets into that label thing I mentioned, and, as soon as I read the Communist Manifesto, I said, "This is a way to, cheat everyone out of their land and property and give it to the rich." I mean,
Exactly what it does.
it didn't fool me for a minute, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, all these people in these schools are taught this at colleges and things, and they haven't figured this out
Well,
because
it's because
they have teachers that are telling them otherwise.
yep. So that it's the interpretation. So we were this nation, or I should say this federation, this confederacy of nations, was constructed on the basis that they were one Protestant,
Mhm,
uh, not Catholic, not Islam, not whatever else. Um, that they were Protestant, and that they were free white men that had the civic duty, and free white people who had the rights to participate in nationality. But uh, the nature of our uh, where was I going with that? I totally blanked out there. I apologize.
okay,
Stupid
cool to
moment.
cool to me. I do that quite a bit.
Stupid moment. I'm reading too many things at the same time. I'm trying to talk. Um. Okay. Take the mic for a second. Help me. I got a brain fart going on here.
I was gonna say something too, and I forgot what it was.
Then let's just change
Let's
gears.
talk about, well, yeah, we're getting deep into the conspiracy stuff, but the basic principle is it's all the same rich people. I mean, the capitalist thing, uh, matter of fact, when I did my research, Rome did the same exact thing that the 14th Amendment did to the United States, which brought people centralized, gave them a status of, a federal type person or a Roman person, and it equalized them with corporations. The same thing happened in Rome when it went into the empire mode. And it's my belief that the United States was formed to do that on purpose, and they were just copying that system as the empire, because New York State was the Empire State since George Washington. So it didn't take him to the 14th Amendment to create this empire. It was there before that. And that's what the Federalist Party was all about. As far as I'm concerned, the Federalist Party that wrote the Federalist Papers that were trying to sell the Constitution on Americans, that they were the original communists, but the communism wasn't invented at that time. And if they had the chance, they would install the 14th Amendment system right away. But people like Jefferson and some other sharp people wouldn't have let that happen. So it took them about 50, 60 years to do it. And of course, the Europeans they brought in under Marxism just helped push it along.
Right. So the one of the first things that occurred in the formation of this new Confederacy of Nations, the American colonies turned to states, turned to Confederacy, was that the revolutionary militia and the regular army, they received war bonds for their service. And these war bonds were going to mature at some random time in the future. They weren't guaranteed when these were going to mature, but all the veterans of the American Revolution were given these war bonds. And these were guaranteed by the new governments, basically by the federal government, you could say the Articles of Confederation created, but it was guaranteed by the states, which upheld the federal government, right? So they had these war bonds, and all of a sudden uh, there's Alexander Hamilton telling all of his buddies that the war bonds are going to mature soon. Who's Alexander Hamilton? Well, he's this guy who had no background in economic policy or no real basis in having financial control of anything, let alone a nation. And he uh, he was given the treasury under George Washington's first
Yeah.
government. But before all that, he was working with the first central bank of the United States of America, which funded the revolution in the first place during the revolution. So in any case, I go too deep on some points here, and I apologize for that. But basically, what's happening is that the uh, the war bonds were going to mature, and Alexander Hamilton goes to all of his buddies in Congress. He says, "Hey, the war bonds are maturing. You should buy as many as you can from these veterans as possible before they mature." So what they did is they created a campaign, and they went around and they convinced all these veterans, many, many, many veterans, to sell their war bonds to them at pennies on the dollar just before the war bonds would mature. And then the war bonds matured, and they made a killing. And this was one of the first things that happened in the country. They stole the money from the veterans who had just fought the Revolutionary War. And that was Alexander Hamilton and the Federalists in general. But there's one point that I agree with when it comes to the Federalists, which is that a permanent president. They wanted to create the idea of a permanent president. And I agree with this because the conversion of one president to another every 4 years is just a stupid idea. It's just one of the dumbest things imaginable to have a new guy come in every 4 years and change the whole thing up. And it's just ridiculous. But the Federalists are pretty stupid in a lot of other ways. So, but Alexander Hamilton, a thief and a guy with a few great ideas.
His mother was Jewish.
I don't doubt it.
It's a little known fact. Anyway.
Yeah, take the mic for a second. I gotta jump off here for 1 second. I'll be back in
Okay.
like 60 seconds, but take the mic.
Yeah, people want to read one of my most popular papers. It's called Treason by Design. I wrote it probably about the same time I came up with my book. It's one of my most popular papers. It's up on the internet. if you look up anything for me, if you use a search engine, uh, use Packinlaw, Pacinlaw, and any information that you have in mind, uh, like treason by design. If you put in Packinlaw treason by design, you'll find the PDF paper on it pretty quickly. There's quite a list of white papers I've written over the years, but this paper is one I wrote a long time ago, and it's been used by law students for their uh, treatises or papers on graduating law school. When they argue the 14th Amendment, they've actually used my paper as a reference, and I have no personal or uh, I have not taken schooling in law. All my work is self-study. I do give a little divine intervention, I think, to my knowledge, because it came really quick back in '98. It hit me all of a sudden, and everything cleared up, all the fog, within minutes. It just, I'm not saying I knew everything, because you still have to study and figure out what they've done. But yeah, so I was blessed with that, and I tried to, like I said, warn the world about it, and everyone's ignored the work. It's just too deep for them, I guess. Well, they have to not ignore it, or like we said, this isn't going to stop anyway.
Well, LB, like I said in the last video, I think you were on the last one I did. Uh, People are soft.
Yeah,
Everybody's soft. Softies.
yeah.
Soft,
Well, they
soft
take the
mind,
easy
soft body.
easy way, easy way. They're like
Right,
water. They take the path of least resistance.
right.
But
We've
as we
been
know,
indoctrinated into it.
yeah, as we know, though, water can be a torrent and make a lot of destruction. So people have to choose what you're going to be.
I'm going to repeat what I said in the last video now. People are soft. We've been softened over time intentionally with indoctrination and the placing of our kids in situations where they're not having to struggle and be stressed and learn how to adapt and be real adults. And so adulthood takes a lot longer today to achieve than the children of 100 years ago, right? Or 150 years ago. The You're in your 20s, you're still a child. You're like an 8-year old from from the 1850s. And so you're just soft. And I'm talking to all of you out there. I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to everybody.
Mm,
It's all soft. You got to harden yourself. I would say that if you're comfortable, make yourself uncomfortable. Make difficulties. That's not to say like throw your life into chaos. It's to say that create stressors that enhance you to make you better. There's good types of stressors. Challenge yourself to wake up and run every morning or whatever, make physical strength, and then at the same time, challenge your mind in every way possible. Challenge in ways that actually make you grow. Create the stress, create the conflict, create that challenge for you to overcome. And you don't even really have to create it today. It's already there. It's everywhere around us. We have these things that we need to overcome, these stressors that already exist there, can and need to overcome to achieve these goals of attaining our freedom again. Just the laziness, the utter just disregard for the fact that we are the most heavily taxed population probably in
mm.
history. In history of humanity, we're the most heavily taxed population in the United States of America that are in the United States. And people just are like, yeah, okay. And they just keep going about their lives. What the fuck?
Yeah, as long as Marx divided things up into historical materialism and Marxist materialism. Historical materialism is what people do to get by. They do their farming, whatever, to exist and live in unity and peace. Marxist materialism is basically buying crap you don't need at Walmart,
Mhm. Which,
and
by the
that's
way,
what they've done.
yep. which, by the way, that started. You'll notice that everything starts after the 14th Amendment. All of these crazy things start to happen, and that they cascade into the population. In the run on the banks, right? They used to call depressions panics. In 1907, there was a panic, and it was the first time that the idea of too big to fail came into being. And really, it surrounded this the I forget what company it was. Basically, the run on the banks happened because the Knickerbocker Company was played by the Rockefellers to I think it was to short them, and then they had a run on the banks, which affected everybody. But anyway, off the point there. The companies that were too big to fail, and I think it was particularly one company that was too big to fail, but there was several that were like this. Was it produced nails, uh, and they said, "You're too big to fail. We're gonna subsidize you. We're going to make sure that you don't fail, and we're going to give you the money, the government money or whatever." And that was before even the Federal Reserve, but it was because we had the 14th Amendment. They just decided that they were going to do this. Uh, the um, Man, I forgot where I was going again. I apologize.
Too big to fail
Maybe
is
I'm
where you
going too
were.
long. Maybe I'm going too long
Yeah,
today.
maybe it's time to cut it off. We're kind of diving into, the deep end of everything, getting off the nationality principle or status.
No, it's fine. I think people like
It all works together. Like,
listen to this, but there's everything that has happened since 1868 has been constructed around the principle that you are a slave, that you don't have your rights, and that you can uh, either acquiesce or you are put into a position where life becomes more difficult to live because everything around you is that way. So you just accept because it's this attritional warfare.
yeah,
We have to find our strength again as a people to rise out of this. And it's not going to happen individually, it's going to happen collectively.
yes,
Now, my brain is getting a little bit muddled here. I've been going for too long, perhaps, but I do want to read this, uh, which is some commentary from the Telegram chat. These are responses that are made to people who ask questions. And I'd really like it if folks in the chat would ask any questions that they have regarding any of this while we're on so that we can answer them directly. A lot of times that guidance just gives us a little bit of a push to say the right things for the crowd. But while we're waiting for that, so a custom, which is related to the common law is the customs and usages of the day. So a custom is a usage which had acquired the force of law, meaning that it is the effective law, is the operative law of the time. When people use the common law today, they oftentimes are intending to refer to a law that has been in existence uh, in some sort of notion of perpetuity, when in actuality, the common law today is the 14th Amendment and all of
yeah.
its branches.
See, the common law is basically court decisions, and I got a favorite principle that I use for that. But they look at court cases as the common law, and basically, it's what they've done under the 14th Amendment is a violation of due process when they do that, but kind of not really because everyone is a 14th Amendment citizen. But there's some cases you may be able to pierce that, but not usually because people are. Anyway, go ahead. That's the common law that most people will. That's what they're talking about today. But common law is based on custom and usages of a society, and we haven't had that for 150 plus years. So
And
it's another misnomer, so to speak.
so the common law being the customs, and the custom being a usage which had acquired the force of law, and a custom derives its force from the tacit consent of the legislature and the people. and supposes an original actual deed or agreement. It supposes an original actual deed or agreement. And so the tacit consent of the people and the legislature, which is what we have today of the 14th Amendment, derives or is where the custom derives. So the customs that we have today are the legislative rules and ordinances and all that bullshit that exists today. That is your common law.
Mm-hmm.
Law cannot be established or abrogated except by the sovereign will. Well, who's the sovereign under the 14th Amendment? But
United States.
this will may be express or implied and presumed, and whether it manifests itself by word or a series of facts is of little importance. When a custom is public, peaceable, uniform, general, continued, reasonable, and certain, it has lasted time, whereof the memory of man runneth not in the contrary. To the contrary, it acquires the force of law, and thus, with 158 years of common law under the 14th Amendment, these things have acquired the force of law by their nature. The statutes, the fact that you have to wear your seatbelt since 1970, that's 50, I think it was 1970, right? When the
Somewhere in
seatbelt,
there.
seatbelt law. Okay, let's call it 1970. Well, that's 26 years of, or excuse me, 56 years of law or of custom that has had the force of law because it's been accepted. You have tacitly agreed to it by not bucking the conqueror, by bucking the thing. So
The rulers, the federal rulers.
right.
Where'd that statement come from, or that quote?
This comes from, I think that comes from Bouvier's.
Okay.
Uh,
Just curious because it's well written. I didn't know if you or one of your students wrote it or whatever.
no, this comes from Bouvier's.
No, yeah, no,
90,
no
I'm
wonder, right?
99% sure. So,
Yeah.
okay, so the common law is the customs of the day, which is the operative law.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important to remember this. Common law is operative law. It's the customs of the day. The operative law is the law that is in action today that you have to abide by. Otherwise, you're going to go to prison, right? Or you're going to get
Mm-hmm.
fined or whatever. That's the operative law, whether or not you want it to be, whether or not you're morally inclined to it, or you have a philosophical disagreement. It doesn't matter. If the cop can knock on your door and take you to jail or pull you over and whatever, if they can fine you and take you to jail and do all these things, it's the operative law. You are going to have to abide by it, or they are going to impose upon you. That is built into the presumption of your political status. But if your political status is not within their jurisdiction, all of a sudden, this becomes something recognizable to the ignoramuses that wear badges and drive around looking for people to fine. If they're notified, if they're made aware of it, right? All of a sudden, you're not in their jurisdiction, so they just have to go, oh, okay, you're not mine. But they have to understand this, and this takes time to build into people to make them understand what it is to be a de jure national. And it's something that's slowly increasing in its potency, but isn't exactly there yet. And that requires us, the people watching, the people who will watch. It requires us to gather, organize, strategize, and act to take action upon these things. Now, I also want to say again, because it's important to remind people that we have a Telegram group that you can go to and you can participate in the deeper conversation. And if you are interested in it, you can start communicating about the political movement that we are building, and also you can find your way into how to actually conduct the paperwork that changes your political status if you want to actually do it. We are not theoretically, or we are not theorizing anything here. We are telling you this is the law. This is how it was organized. Here's where you can find it and discover more for yourself. And here's the solution to our problem that we are all facing that would correct everything that people complain about in this land. That's the nutshell. So the only reason for the 14th Amendment slave state of the last 158 years is that your great great grandparents acquiesced to it. And then down the generations, every one of their children has acquiesced to it. Until today, you are alive and you are acquiescing to it, but you have the choice, you have the option to say no, to change your ways. When you follow the process we are educating on here, You exit the jurisdiction wherein the operative law, wherein this operative law going back to 1868 applies. You exit that jurisdiction. The custom common law operative law today is the de facto communist state. By changing status to the guaranteed Republican state, guaranteed in the Constitution, you exit the jurisdiction of that operative law. Now, I have another thing to say here. Is there anything you want to add to that, LB?
No, not really. Just that people have taken my process and messed it up. They call it status correction, whatever they call it, and they really aren't doing it properly. And I think a lot of it's done by operatives. And once the operatives get out there, they get the opportunists that copy it, and it's just a mess. Like Corey said, until we're working together, it's going to be that way. So that's all I got to add to that.
Okay, and then also to add to this as a summary for closing this out, but I want to round it out for folks. So I want to make sure that it's understood, the foundation, the law of what we're discussing here, and all the key structural, architectural components of the law that allow us to arrive at this conclusion. Maxims are the law within the common law, right? LB, can you define that any better than that? How maxims are
That's
used?
true. Maxims are, basically United States adopted the English common law for the Anglos, and that was not only their law, but it's just mostly common sense. For example, one of my favorite or the most principled common law maxim is the contract makes the law. So the Constitution's a contract. Are we party to it? No, the rulers are, and then you have to follow down from there. Your contract is you consent to be governed by it. So everything's contract. That's why they call this might be obscene to some people, but sexual intercourse. The term intercourse means contract, agreements
Right,
to do something with someone.
right,
So et cetera, et cetera. So the common law maxims are just basically common sense, and they're historical, ancient in some respects. It's just a collection of law since they've been compiling law. Well, over the last 2,000 plus years, probably. Even the Law of Nations, Vattel's was a collection of uh, international type laws that he proposed in his book, which was put out by the Catholic Church, actually. So they control everything. You've heard the statement, all roads lead to Rome. It is basically tied in with that, but that's deep stuff. But anyway, um, we follow the law, and it's their law, so they can't deny it in a sense.
right. So the maxim defines the law, and and it's the exercise of the law within the common law. Okay, so here's a maxim: Actus me in vito factus, non est meus actus. An act done by me against my will is not my act. It is your will that frames your conduct. By consenting to the de facto by your willful actions, you provide the tacit consent agreement to their governance over you, a contract. It is not against your will, it is with your will, is what that is saying. Another maxim: Cur tempus contra decidus et suidris contemptoris. Time runs against the slothful and those who neglect their rights. It is your responsibility to be energetic and vigilant. The free man is he whom bears the responsibility. Super important concept here. If you are a lazy pile of garbage, you're not a free man. That's it. Bottom line, you have to be vigilant. You have to be on top of your game. To be free is to bear the responsibility. That means you are accountable for everything in your life, and you're also accountable for your nation.
Basically, this whole system is a default ruler situation for lazy people.
Yeah, that is communism.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is communism because communism is the mommy and daddy state. And yeah, it's perfect for the lazy. And yeah, John over here in the chat said Maxim is a truth having been tested by trial and error from time immemorial and found to be true. Very, very well said.
Yes, yeah.
The Ashwander Rule 6. The court will not pass upon the constitutionality of a statute at the instance of one who has availed himself of its benefits. This is an incredibly important rule. And what it means is that by reaping reward of the statutory, the communist de facto state, such as the privilege of driving with license or voting for president of the United States or filing income tax with the IRS or receiving food stamps or Social Security, you have reaped a reward from the statute. You have gotten the privilege of a driver's license to move yourself about when you didn't need one by right. As such, you cannot argue the constitutionality of that statute. You cannot say it's unconstitutional for you to do something to me if you are availing yourself of that benefit. You cannot vote and then cry about the way that they administer the voting. You don't have a right to vote. You are privileged. And you exercise that privilege, and thus you cannot fight them on this.
It is a right given by the communist system.
Right. But it's a privilege. It's a right that can be taken away.
Right, exactly.
Okay, another maxim, animus ad se omne justicit. It is to the intention that all law applies. This is a very important maxim. This is a very important piece of understanding the law. It defines on its most shallow aspect the difference between intentionally going and murdering somebody and unintentionally murdering somebody. They have very different results in law. And the entire composition of the de facto is one which violates law. It is accepted as law, but it is only in fact. What was the intention behind the formation of this de facto United States? So now we're talking about on a grander scale, what's the intention behind the creation of this de facto system? And now what is your intention now that you know that you're a slave in rebellion to your organic constitutional republic, your birthright? What is it that now that you have been informed, what is your intention? To remain a slave once you know the fraud exists implies willful intent. Very easily arguable in court. The free man is he who bears the responsibility. The intent of the free man and the intent of the willful slave are at diametric odds. They're diametrically opposed to each other and they are at odds to one another. Excuse me. And as such, to know you are a slave and do nothing about it is to be a willful slave. To not know you're a slave and do nothing about it is to be a presumed slave. And they're different, but in the end, probably in effect the same. Just your language will be different. Theirs will not be. Theirs will not change. And then this last point is very important. And I like repeating this because I think it's very unknown. Probably the most significant aspect of law regarding what we're dealing with here, and it's ancient. It is the law of slavery or the law regarding slavery, the laws that have surrounded slavery from time immemorial. This is not new. This goes back to probably the first time that somebody took somebody else's freedom from them. The law that has governed slavery across the world for millennia is like this. He who does not successfully defend his and his people's freedom owes his labor and his life to the will of those who did. But the slave remains such only in so long as he allows his slavery to perpetuate. It is his responsibility. What this means is, and this follows natural law, right? Natural law doesn't care about your feelings or your opinion or your morality. Morality is subjective. Different cultures have different moralities. There is no objective morality. There is the morality of a specific nation that agrees, concurs on a thing, culture, and follows through with that. Now, a lot of morality is, in effect, universal, that everybody understands that just like unjustified killing of another human being is murder, and that should not happen without some sort of consequence or without some sort of causality that makes sense and is justified. Like, again, we said unjustified, so it's just murder. That's pretty much agreed upon, but not everywhere. It's not 100% universal. But anyway, so this principle is super important, and it's active today, just as it was when the uh, Mohammedans were taking white slaves in northern Africa, and when the Jews were transporting African slaves in immense quantities to Brazil, and uh, every other circumstance of slavery throughout time, is that you are a slave when you cannot defend your freedom. And you are a free man, free woman, whatever, when you can. Where we are at today is that we have not defended our freedom. We have not done whatever was necessary to defend that freedom. The law prescribes channels by which we do this. You appeal through man's law, and if it doesn't work, you appeal through God's law. That is affirmed in the Lockean philosophy that constructed this sovereign nations. Natural law inherently includes the conqueror. It is the very reason de facto exists in the lexicon. Without the acceptance that there are conquerors and conquered, we would not have the language that describes it, because language follows reason. Slavery is the willful acquiescence. One who easily submits is more naturally a slave. One who bucks their conqueror endlessly, like an unbreakable horse, willing to die before they surrender their will, that one is the free man. They're never ending in their challenge. That's what makes them free. This principle is recognized in the law everywhere and throughout time. All civilizations have had to confront this basic truth that might equals right for the conqueror, and they rule in fact despite the law, and that freedom rests on the ability of the individual and the people generally to keep it. We are providing the only known way to protect the freedom that was guaranteed by our forebears and our birth without blood in the streets. If we are wrong, it has yet to be proven, despite enormous amount of challenges. And where we are right has been proven in the law. It just has to be proven out in action at this point. But that requires a collective effort. Never has it been easier for the slave to exit his slavery as it is today, and never has before the slave been so in love with his slavery. And never before has the slave been so unaware that he is indeed a slave. The ignorance of the average American and their love of the comforts that surround us and are given to us by this government that has been turned into a religious entity, a god of its own that people beg and bow and give praise to. It's never been easier to exit slavery, and yet nobody's doing
Where's
it.
that coming from?
What?
That's apropos what you're saying. Who wrote that?
I wrote that.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. Sometimes it's me. Sometimes it's something else.
I'm lucky I ran into you. It's about time after 25 years.
Okay, so the last thing here is coming to the point, I guess. Nothing prevents us from correcting our status, but our own acquiescence to slavery. Really, it comes down to just a few points. You are presumed to be a slave. You can't change that. Okay, that is from their perspective. Their being the de facto state, they presume you to be a slave. You are bound to take action, do something about it. You contracted into slavery and affirm your status as a slave regularly by taking benefits and signing things and contractually being involved with the de facto. To not be a slave, you must declare as much in the way the law prescribes, or you will not be heard, for slaves do not need to be heard by their masters. Proof of status must be made. You must provide the proof of your status, which you will have if you are properly able to be a national of a state. Once you provide proof, you are no longer a slave, but you now must bear the responsibility of freedom. You must know how to be a free man or woman and how to operate the vehicle of freedom without giving yourself away back into the system, without selling yourself back into slavery. And if you ever contract again with the slave master, you will again be presumed. How do I live as a free man in a society built for slaves? Very important question. One, operate your own business or work for other free men in private contracts. Probably a little bit difficult to accomplish right off the bat when there's not millions of people who've converted into their proper political status, but still the principle stands. Operate your own business. Work for others who are doing the same. Create internal banking structures in law like family banking. It's been held as a secret for a long time, but with all the information available to people today and with the right motivation and will to learn how to do these things, it becomes accessible. And this is something that I am very particularly involved in, besides the laws, is how to live as a free man or woman and exercise all these different ways to do so through banking or finance in various ways, trusts and other things. Now, this does not resolve. I'm not talking about the Sesqui trust and all that. Okay, SSKV, all that. That's garbage. I'm talking about just a trust that separates ownership um, into equity and benefit. Different types of trusts do exist, and there's all sorts of ways to do these things, but uh, most definitely the ability to exercise these things allows us to live as free men and women until the day where we actually access our treasury again as proper de jure state uh, ought to of its nations. That was a little bit rough, but I think you got me. Now, you can also educate others and bring them into the fold. The more state nationals, the less burden on the individual. Create strong support networks. This is a collectivist movement, not individualist oriented. You as an individual do not resolve the problem by expatriating, by correcting your political status. You doing that alone doesn't solve the problem. We doing that together and supporting each other in our own not new, but
Proper.
proper and reacquired jurisdiction. This is what resolves the problem that we are all facing collectively. We have to work collectively. And then be involved in the political component through PAC to force through PAC and through these political efforts that soon are going to be coming out, and we will be discussing them, to force the hand of the Rump Congress and the rest of the clowns that operate this de jure system. It doesn't take too many of us to do this, but it does take a lot of support for us to do this. So it doesn't take too many people changing their status to correct the national problems, right? To correct the nation's problems.
Get it
Nations plural.
judicially recognized. That's the
Right.
problem. Because right now they're operating off this gray area, which
Right.
is a mishmash of garbage. And it's not going to get fixed until this is a line in the sand is drawn.
So this component, the political movement component, is something you definitely can get involved in, and this is how you can live as a free man, is by bringing yourself into the fold and engaging it with the rest of us, and we all work together to do this. Whether you status correct or not, being involved in that component, whether you're status corrected or not, doesn't matter. Some amount of people will have to status correct to do the thing, but you can support in other ways if it's too difficult to do in your life right now to correct your status and not be able to access the 14th Amendment benefits that exist. And then the sixth point to this of how do I live as a free man in a society built for slaves? Never contract with them again. That's the most simple thing to say and maybe not as easy to do in real life, but just don't contract. That's what binds you to their jurisdiction and their authority. Don't contract. Don't vote. Don't take benefits. Don't get food stamps and Social Security. Don't go get licensed on things. Once you're out, you're out. Jurisdiction change. That's it. Stop participating. That might be the end of all the things I have to say.
There's a lot said there. Very well said.
Okay, what last thing, and then we can end this for today. Uh, there is law theory, then there is law. We are teaching the law. We are not teaching law theory. Law theory is the philosophical forum where we talk about what could exist, what ought to exist, uh, what we want, right? The ideal, the dream. Sure, that's law theory. We don't do that. We are teaching the law and how to access what we need to access to correct the problems that exist in reality, not in dreamland.
Yeah, and be careful of people teaching equity. That's the essence of communism.
Equity. Okay, so that's a good point. Equity is not, in and of itself. Equity is not
It's
bad.
not
Equity is also not law. Equity
not law. Yeah.
equity is a principle that exists where law ends. So you have the corpus of law, right? Let's say that you have the body of the law, the corpus of the law. If the law does not describe or prescribe a solution, then there's equity. And equity can only be accessed where the law ends. So when people talk about equity, they're trying to ignore the law to access equity. It doesn't work. You
Right.
can't do it. You can't do it. Equity exists only where the law ends. Where there is no law, there's equity. I can't put it any simpler than that. And you're right. When you try to bypass the law toward equity, that is communism. That is exactly
That's what they're doing
what it
by
is.
teaching that because they
Um,
don't teach the law.
right.
But we know there's all kind of operatives out there to keep the system in place. And
Uh,
the average person cannot detect it, especially if they're green, new at the topic or subject.
um, okay. So, last thing I got to say here is that I personally have had lots of cases dismissed in courts while being a 14th Amendment citizen. And I guarantee you that none of them were because I beat them in the law. It was because of some tangential burden laid upon them that they didn't want to continue the case. They gave up on it for some other reason. Maybe I was just too annoying and not profitable enough, right? Or maybe it was because I was being too public about one component or another that they didn't really want to be public. There's always ways to kind of almost coerce them into letting it go, or maybe they just have an overabundance of cases and they don't need you to fill their coffers that day. Whatever. There's a lot of reasons out there why they
They don't
might
want to let the cat out of
disrupt
the
their case.
bag sometimes too.
They don't want to let the cat out of the bag. So you might be right functionally in everything you're saying, because honestly, everything that I say now is the same as I used to say, except now I have the jurisdiction. Now I have the political status. So now I'm not going to court. I'll just send them some documentation and that's the end of it. But the, uh, the nature of your presence, in the court system is bound to your political status. Everything stems from there. So you could say the same exact words as a 14th Amendment citizen and then as a de jure national. And the outcome will be absolutely different because your political status determines the jurisdiction. Everything voluntary Jack said, the most hopelessly enslaved are those who falsely believe they are free. Very good. Very true. Uh, and he also said, uh, thanks for caring about responsible freedom. Let us get to more with this message about challenging voluntary enslavement. challenging voluntary enslavement. Right. I mean, that's basically what we're talking about here. You've voluntarily enslaved yourself through tacit agreement, and we don't challenge it. I think I might have even used that language earlier. Let's clarify that.
It's
I
called
don't. We
belligerent claimant in person is what I
Yeah. We don't
in the
challenge.
document.
Uh,
We kill it.
yeah. We collapse their argument into nothing because there's another principle here. So you have two claimants or you have a claimant that comes to a court, and they supply an affidavit. That affidavit stands as a sworn statement. It is the truth applied to the court. If the other party doesn't come, the only truth in admissible evidence that has been provided is the one affidavit, and that affidavit will stand. Now, there's flexibility to this in the court's interpretation a little bit in a proper court, but for the most part, it's going to stand. Then the person who has to defend themselves from the claim will come to court and supply their sworn statement, their affidavit. Whichever one carries higher admissible evidence is different than evidence. Evidence is just anything you might throw at the court to say one way or another on whatever's happening in the court. You're trying to prove it out, right? For your case, you might throw evidence, all the evidence you want at the court, but none of it might be admissible, meaning that it can pass the qualifications that are required, the requisites that are demanded of the quality of evidence provided to be sustained as evidence. So you go to court, you give the affidavit as admissible evidence, sworn testimony, whichever stands higher, which is more admissible in the end, is going to win the case. In this case, it's like we're doing the same thing with the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment's got this contract and it said, well, you got the driver's license, you voted, you did all these things. And what we're doing is we're saying, well, that might be true before, but look at this thing that I have here, this documentation, which proves that I am a national now of a state and verifies my birthright. And I don't want to get too much into details about the paperwork, but basically, you you're not challenging. You are applying admissible evidence to the
Yeah.
the case. You're to the court that says what is already applied to the court doesn't actually exist within the reality today. It's a sworn statement, and the application of that will stand as law, not as you just saying something in a courtroom. No, the affidavit is a sworn statement. It stands as law when it defeats the claim against it, right? So, with all that, what we get to is that you are providing the admissible evidence that you are a national of a state, and you are giving a reasonable amount of time for them to say, no, we have proof that you're not. And when they don't, now they admit through their own tacit consent that you are what you say you are. These are some fundamental uh, constructs of how you correct your political status. We can get into that a lot more, especially for folks who move down the funnel that we have created here, which is you can go to our Telegram group and join the Telegram group, Jure Nationality Correction, which I'll put in the chat here, and is also, if you go to any Liberty Uncensored article, any recent article, at the top of the article is a series of links, and in there it says Law Channel. And if you click Law Channel, it'll take you to the Telegram group where the conversation goes much deeper and goes a lot longer and is consistently held up. And then as people are able to communicate the law back to us, we will also invite you to join the Discord, which is kind of the last stage. It's the last place where you're going to go, where you're going to be talking about expatriation before you take action on it. And with that said, I will leave the link in the chat here for people who want to grab the link for the Telegram. And then I think we'll close out. Visit Liberty Uncensored and grab the link there if you don't get it here. Anything else you want to say before we close out, LB?
No, I think we've covered a lot, or you have for sure. Like I
Okay.
said, it's good to find someone that believes in truth and not believing what they hear. It's been
Yes.
25
Never
years.
just
25
believe
years.
people. Never just believe people. Uh, always investigate. So, okay. So we do not provide information that is uninvestigated. Okay. Now, I have joined up with LB here because after roughly 15 years of attempting so many things, guinea pigging myself across the board with all sorts of different methods that people have put out there to the world, I have learned the value of the different methods that people have put out and seen them mostly to just fall flat on their face. LB has been supporting this construct of how we go about doing this, and it fit so neatly into what I already knew. It fit so precisely into what I already knew, point for point. Every single thing fits perfectly. That for me, it was just an undeniable truth, and it is reflected in the law, and uh, and so we don't support things that are not reflected in the language of the law. It's not law theory. It is not us trying to manipulate the system to get to not have to pay taxes or to get away with something. We are not hiding, and we are not charging for the education of this uh, process. The education is free to the world to be able to access this information, know what it is that's happening, why it's happening, and what we can do about it. There's a lot of other things that you can engage here. Once you're ready, you can approach us to discuss the actual paperwork itself. When you can teach the method, when you can teach the law back to us, then you can expatriate with us. Uh, and for anybody who's interested in trusts, anybody's interested in private membership associations, private banking, um, community level trusts and private banking and PMAs and all these things, or private. You can also contact me for those, and the work that I do there is for payment. You join a PMA to get involved in the education and those components, but um, the nature of that is really providing the end result, not just the education. And we can heal a lot of things with these methods, both before status correction, even at the individual level, and after these results can show themselves to be very profitable for individuals and communities. So I'm burned out. LB, let's end it here. Thank you everybody for coming on. Thank you LB for being here.
Sure.
And we are going to do this every week. Yes, LB?
Sure.
Okay, every week at this time, 2:30 Mountain Standard Time, 4:30 Eastern, we're going to come on and we are going to talk about status correction and go into deeper and deeper components of it. And this video will stand sort of as a place to
Introduction.
start from. Yes, this is the introduction to the topic. And anybody who has questions, just keep sending them in. Send them in through Liberty Uncensored. You can follow LB at the Jurist on Substack, and you can hit the Telegram. You can go to all the places.
I might blog too.
Oh yeah, can you rep that for a second?
Oh, geez. It's the blogger. Just a minute. What is it? Can't find it. All these URLs are funny. People's Awareness Coalition. Just look on search. Just put in LB Bork uh, blog. I suppose it would come up.
Right. We'll get the link later and throw it into the
It's on
video. We'll put it in the
blogger.com.
article. We'll put it in the article that comes out with the recording of this. And so catch the link there. Catch the links everywhere. Follow it, share it, spread it. Liberty Uncensored is highly censored, ironically, and PAC is highly censored, and all of these
Yeah,
things that we're doing are censored extremely. I had 2 days on TikTok and they shut me down recently. Today
really.
they shut me
Wow,
down on TikTok after 2
wow.
days. Um,
They've
everywhere shuts me down.
they've kicked me off all forums for
Yeah,
25 years.
Instagram shut me down.
We had a web page, a wiki, and they took that off within 2 days.
X didn't shut me down, but it's impossible for people to see my content.
Right,
I've had
exactly.
people contact me every once in a while because they intentionally look for my content. They type it in exactly the username and then they can find it. But besides that, you cannot find Liberty Uncensored on X, no matter what
No,
postings or whatever. It's all just hidden. So
buried,
so it's
buried.
the same kind of thing across the board everywhere. They censor us. So the only way we get out there is when people take action in the smallest form possible. And I beg you guys to do this, which is to just click share and share it somewhere, especially to other venues, other places where we can't access. So share it, like it, do all that stuff because it really does help us uh, to share this
Sure.
content that is the only remedy at law to correct our enslavement. Help us out. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, LB, for coming on. We'll see you next time.